Hello YouTube, Goddard Radio Moscow here again with another beer review for you, as is usual. For this one we actually have quite an interesting beer review for you. We're going to stick to Scotland this time, but we're going to go to the oldest craft brewery in the country. This was the brewery who really set the ball in motion for the kind of love of craft beer in Scotland, so really quite cool to actually go and do my first review from this brewery today. So we're going to go down to the little town of Biggar in the Scottish borders to the southwest of Edinburgh, and we're going to visit the Broughton Ales brewery and have a taste of their Old Jock Scotch Ale. So this one should be quite an interesting beer to review for you today. I've never tried anything from this brewery, despite them being a bit of a kind of cult classic, if you like. I've just never come across them until recently, which is kind of quite unusual, a little bit disappointing actually, but hopefully this is the start of something good anyway, and I will review their other beers for you at a later date as well. But as is usual with my beer reviews then, I'll take you through a brief history of the brewery, tell you a little bit about where the beer's from, all of that sort of thing. But as I always say, if you are simply just interested in the tasting of this beer, feel free to go on towards the latter part of the video and you will catch that particular segment, and I'll also put the little box up here for you to click on there as well. And as always, the brewery website is in the video description there, and there is a link that will take you to my future Broughton beer reviews, but they will be added just over the next little while actually. Hopefully I can get some more of their beers in for you to review. But anyway, the Broughton Brewery was founded in 1979 by David Younger and James Collins in a former abattoir in the small village of Biggar in the Scottish Borders region. Now, Broughton Ales, as I mentioned, is regarded as the first Scottish microbrewery, and at this time they actually marketed themselves to customers looking for a craft beer experience as an alternative to the mass-produced lagers and export beers that were and still are available all over the place. But Collins and Younger actually released their first beer, which was the Green Mantle Ale, to great success, and the brewery became well known throughout Scotland as a result of this beer. And the brewery was actually so popular, or this beer rather was actually so popular, that the locals soon began to refer to the brewery as the Green Mantle Brewery, and this beer is actually considered a bit of a cult classic by the older generation of craft beer lovers in Scotland. That's one I guess I really need to review for you quite soon actually. But the Green Mantle Ale actually helped greatly increase the demand for small batch brewed beer in Scotland, and the brewery actually decided to introduce another few beers to their range. This included this guy here, the Old Jock Ale, the Merlin's Ale, and the Scottish Oatmeal Stout. And this is one of the things with this brewery. Each of the beers were actually named after a well-known character from the Scottish Borders region, and with this brewery you'll see the images of famous Scots and things on a lot of their bottles. There's one of them which I think it's called Excisers, actually has Robert Burns on it, and a lot of their beers, as I say, all of them in fact do have famous Scottish characters on them, particularly focused, as I say, on the Scottish Borders region. But in 1995 the brewery underwent a change in ownership and was taken over by Giles Litchfield, who actually introduced the famous Beers with Character moniker for a series of 10 bottled beers, and his main objective was actually to increase the exports of the brewery, and he really put this in motion in the year 1996, and the brewery's been growing ever since then. And today the brewery actually exports to Italy, France, Sweden, Norway, Finland, Canada, the USA and Japan, and they produce 8 bottled beers, 10 permanent cask ales, and they've got over 15 different seasonal beers as well. So that's your brief history of the Broughton Ales brewery, if you like. I'll just list the other beers for you there. So you have the Merlin's Ale. Most of these beers are bitters in fact. So you've got the Merlin's Ale, which is a bitter, the Black Douglas, which is a strong bitter, Border Gold, which is a golden ale, the Oatmeal Stout, which is obviously a stout there, Exciseman's 80 Shilling, which is a strong bitter. I think this is the one that has Robbie Burns on the cover there. You also have the Gilly, which is a bitter, the Green Mantle beer, which I think is a strong bitter as well, and you have the Organic Lager in addition to this guy here, the Old Jock, which is a Scotch Ale. So let's get on to the tasting of this guy. I'm really looking forward to actually trying this one for you. It's a 6.7% Scotch Ale, as you would have guessed, and it uses Challenger, Fugels and First Golding hops. It didn't say what the malt base of this guy was, but the description, there's a description with each of these beers on the brewery website, so go and have a little look at that if you're interested. And incidentally, you can actually go to this brewery for tours as well. So the story with this beer is, it says, the description from the website says, for centuries the soldiers of the Highland and Lowland regiments of Scotland have been referred to as jocks, powerful fighting men who have won battle honours all over the world from historical times to present day. These men, who often fought in terrible conditions against great odds, were renowned for their determination and valour. Old Jock Ale reflects the strength and character of these men who would have enjoyed such a strong ale. It's quite cool actually, kind of dedicating it to war veterans a little bit there, which is quite cool. And I'll just bring up the camera here again and let you just have a little look at the label art on this one. As you can see, you've got your kilted soldier in there with the tartan and stuff like that. Really quite cool cover actually. I'll probably keep this one actually. I quite like it how they've got the hop flowers and the Scottish flags on the side there. It's just a plain bottle cap on this one, which is quite common for the Broughton Ales brewery. I think all of them are plain caps, and you can see they've got hop flowers just on the in the glasswork here, which is quite cool as well. So I think I'll keep this bottle as well. And actually, that thing I just read out to you there, I didn't realise, but it actually has that little description I just read to you there on the bottle as well. I had that in my notes for this beer too. So as I mentioned, this guy is a 6.7% alcohol by volume Scotch ale. So let's get this guy out and get on with the tasting here. As I mentioned, quite excited to try this one for you today. So let's pop it open. Yeah, as you can see, a nice smoky opening there. So let's get it out and into the glass. Actually quite light looking for a Scotch ale in my experience. The Scotch ales I've seen have been a little bit darker than that before, but should be good anyway. It's got good ratings on Rate Beer and Beer Advocate, so I'm sure it'll be a great beer. So as you can see, actually it's come out a little bit more red than it looked when it's coming out of the bottle. As you can see, if I bring this beer up, if I bring this up to the camera again for you, it's quite a nice sort of dark kind of ruby colour, a little bit of a maybe more mahogany actually. It does remind me a little bit of mahogany. That's probably a better way to describe it. As you can see, it's got a nice one finger head on it there. It's actually more white than off-white, maybe just a slight little bit of tan in there, but mainly a white frothy head on this guy. It does have just a little bit of carbonation just coming up towards the head there. Not very much at all, but that's what you would expect from a Scotch ale. Usually it's a bit of a thicker body on this type of beer, and you usually expect it to be a bit more full-bodied and things, so not so much in the way of carbonation in fact. So it looks really good. I can actually smell a little bit of it just as I kind of was moving it around there. It actually smells really nice. Quite fruity, a lot of kind of dark roasted malts as you would expect. A nice little bit of caramel, dark kind of caramel in this beer as well. Yeah, a lot of caramel. It's actually quite a fruity one. The fruits are sticking out quite a little bit in this beer. You've got kind of figs and plums and some raisins in there as well. Very kind of actually sweet and fruity smelling beer, this guy. It's not one of the darker Scotch ales that you'll quite often find. But yeah, it's very kind of a lot of kind of roasted malt in there, dark caramel. But as I say, the most prominent thing that's sticking out at me is the kind of sweet fruits. You do even have a little bit of a kind of burnt and peaty smell to this one. It reminds me a little bit of whiskey, just a little tiny bit. It's quite subtle, and there's also some kind of yeast in there as well. It's got that kind of bready underlying to it. But yeah, overall it's a very kind of sweet and fruity beer. So, and you can see as well the head on this guy is just fading down to a very thin foamy layer. But yeah, like I say, quite a fruity aroma to this guy. Some nice kind of peaty, just underlying peaty and smoky character. A little bit of yeast as well, but some nice dark roasted and caramel malts in there too. Quite an interesting one, but quite a sweet aroma for a Scotch ale in my experience. But let's give it a try and see how we get on here. Well, that's quite surprising. Very, very roasted, but you don't smell it so much in the aroma, I think. But yeah, very, very malty beer. This is actually probably one of the most malty beers I've had, in fact. There's a lot of dark brown toffee in there, caramel sugar sort of thing, a really lot of roasted dark malts in here. There's a little bit of the smoked and peaty character as well, which is just kind of sitting on the middle of the tongue, which is quite interesting. It complements the roasted brown sugars quite well actually. It kind of balances it out a little bit more. It's quite an interesting one, this guy. Yeah, definitely quite a little hint of that sort of peaty whiskey character in there. Really quite an interesting little component to the beer that I've never quite had in a Scotch ale before. There's a little bit of nutty, a kind of like bready and nutty character to this guy as well, but it's a very, very roasted malt, quite a little bit of peaty character, like I'm saying. that mixes really well with the kind of roasted caramel brown sugar things, and you've got some like that roasted bready and nutty character really is mixing very well with that. It's the alcohol warmth in this guy is actually quite well hidden, that's the thing. But I suppose for 6.7%, it maybe is a little bit light compared to some of the Scotch ales I've had before. Some of the ones I've seen up about 8% and things like that. But it's a really nice beer, this guy, actually. It moves on. You're getting the sort of dark fruits kind of coming out on the end of this one, but they're actually quite subtle. It's quite interesting that the aroma is very fruity, but the beer is far more malty than the aroma would have you believe. Yeah, this is a really, really nice one, in fact. But like I'm saying, you're getting this really malty opening to this beer. A lot of roasted and brown sugar flavours in there, with just that underlying kind of peaty, burnt character. It's really, really, it's got that nice, really kind of Scottish feel about it. This is a beer you want to sit in front of a roaring fire with, you know. This would be a good campfire beer, actually, to warm you up. Really, really good in that way, and it's got just an underlying of kind of bready and nutty flavours which are kind of sitting, and they're actually quite prominent into the aftertaste, and you've got the little peaty character sitting in the middle of the tongue, and you just have a little bit of sweetness around the edge of the tongue from that kind of the dark fruits, the raisins and the figs and plums that are kind of coming out towards the end. It's quite a fresh fruity flavour that it has just in the aftertaste there. But yeah, it starts to get that fruity sweetness very quickly in the beer, and then it just resides into the aftertaste. It gets sharp, and then it just kind of fades into quite a nice mild sweetness in this. This beer is actually really well done. It's really well balanced, and it's quite unique in that sense because it does have that nice little peaty taste to it. But yeah, in terms of the mouthfeel of this guy, it's mid, I would say it's probably full-bodied, maybe a little bit on the lighter side of full-bodied. It's not quite as full-bodied as some of these stouts that you can get, but it's certainly got enough of a body on it to kind of get into the Scotch ale style. It's really nicely done, actually. They've got it just right so that you get the kind of thickness that you expect from the style. They have it kind of spot on, I think, but it's quite thick and oily as well. It has that nice oily character, and that actually really helps the fruit come out a little bit in this guy. It kind of helps it go from that quite sharp into the nice kind of pardon me, the nice kind of mild sweetness that you get just on the aftertaste there, and it also complements the kind of peaty character just a little bit. Maybe it helps separate that a little bit from the kind of dark and roasted brown sugars that I mentioned are in the flavour also. It kind of helps separate them in a little way, that bit as well, so it's really quite good actually in that sense, I would say. But yeah, overall it's really nice, I would say. The alcohol warmth is quite well hidden, and it's quite low carbonation as well, but I would say that the carbonation, despite the fact that it's low, it does have just a little bit of an attack on the beginning that helps kind of bring out the kind of roasted malt a little bit. You'll notice that when you taste it, the carbonation does just give a little bit in the way of assistance to bringing out that kind of roasted peaty character a little bit, and it actually does it really well. They've got everything about this beer right, I would think. It's a really nice Scotch ale, and the thing is with this guy, like I'm saying, it's a little bit unique in the sense that it has that sort of whisky peaty flavour in it as well. So if you're watching from outside of Scotland, you know, and you see a couple of Scottish beers sitting around and you want a Scotch ale, this guy will give you something a little bit unique. A lot of these American kind of Scotch ales that you get, they do tend to go a little bit overboard on the fruitiness and the sweet character to these guys. So, you know, give this guy a try and see what you think. This is one of the original Scotch ales, and as I say, it's from a very early point in the history of the oldest brewery in Scotland, or the oldest microbrewery in Scotland. So it's very unique in that sense. You could maybe even consider this guy the benchmark of the style for that reason. But who knows, I mean, people like different things, but I think this is a very, very well done beer. In my 200 or so videos now, I think this is actually only the second or third Scotch ale that I've reviewed for you, but I think this one is a very, very strong beer, and I really look forward actually now to trying some of the other Broughton Ale beers. Now that I've tried my first one, that kind of sets things in motion to try the next one, I guess. So hopefully you will see a few more Broughton Ale beer reviews from me in the next little while. I hope you've enjoyed this one. Like I say, this is a very nice Scotch ale, and it has that little bit of unique character for it as well, in that kind of peaty whiskey taste, so very, very unique in that sense, I would say. But give them a check out, go and check out their brewery website. You can go to this brewery for tours if you do happen to be visiting Scotland. Probably a very interesting place to go actually, because the facility I think will be a little bit older than the likes of Brewdog and stuff like that, so go and check them out. I hope you've enjoyed my beer review. If you do happen to have tried this guy yourself, please let me know in the comment section your own thoughts on this beer. Always interesting to hear those. But I will be back soon with more beer reviews. As always, please like, subscribe, share, and I will catch you soon with another video. Cheers.